The Department of Energy has confirmed a 3,400 kiloton reserve of lithium discovery in California's Salton Sea, creating a rich opportunity to reduce America's economic and energy dependence on other countries and to possibly create thousands of jobs. The discovery is one of the largest exploitable lithium deposits in the world, and in August, volcanologists discovered a large lithium deposit in Nevada, which would produce between 20,000 and 40,000 kilotons. Both deposits are enough to fulfill the globe's lithium needs many times over, per the national interest.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration has delayed the consideration of new natural gas export terminals in the United States. Per AP News, this decision aligns with environmentalists who fear an increase in exports could lead to, quote, potentially catastrophic planet-warming emissions, while President Biden has pledged to cut pollution in half by 2030. New reporting has also found that the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, or AROC, which organized the protest blocking San Francisco's Bay Bridge, where organizers called for a ceasefire in Gaza, and school walkouts in San Francisco in support of Gaza, received taxpayer money from multiple agencies in that city. The school district says it is currently investigating the allegations.
AROC is a, quote, fiscally sponsored project of the Tide Center, a group that has organized many traffic shutdowns since the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas conflict. According to Pirateware, AROC is legally indistinguishable from Tide's. AROC's website even compels readers to make checks out to Tide Center, the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. Okay, a lot there. This natural gas story, the question of whether or not Biden is beneath the environmentalists is a really interesting one. The New Republic had an interesting take, which said that, well, yes, like superficially, this is a win for climate activists because they have been pushing for it. If you put it in the context of how natural gas production in the United States is at an all-time high, has peaked under the Biden administration, much to the chagrin of environmentalists, but that we now basically don't import any natural gas. We create all the natural gas that we use. If we're really saying that at a point at which our production is fully satisfying our national needs, we can't consider at any point whether or not there are negative trade-offs in terms of the environmental hazards to American citizens, then what are we really saying here? That there needs to be like a maximalist approach to sucking harmful products out of the earth, even if there is no longer the same kind of economic upside, there's no real use for it. What is the argument?
Well, we're going to have, I think the argument is we're going to have our need increases over time. We want a robust economy. We want, good isn't enough. We want perfect, we want better, we want great.
And at what expense? Because it's not as though the objection to burning natural gases, extracting natural gases, is just because I hate capitalism. It's because there's global warming and it's going to negatively affect people in other industries, whether it's because you're a fisher and you're no longer able to earn money because the water temperatures are too high for your crop, your fish to survive, whether it's because you're a farmer who's dealing with droughts and changing climate patterns that no longer enable you to earn a living. I mean, it's not a zero-sum country. We live in a community and in a global environment where there are downsides to this sort of thing. So, you know, the New Republic points out that this isn't some great boon for climate activists, that Joe Biden has largely been very hostile to climate interests and very positive to energy interests. And if pro-energy folks or conservatives or alike want to criticize him for this, that's fine, but they're winning. You have two pro-drilling parties with Biden or Trump. Either way, that's what you're going to get. So the only person that seems to really have any complaint here are people that are invested in the long-term survival of the species.
Yeah, well, look, I support taking environmental concerns seriously and looking for good alternatives and moving to those over time, moving to cleaner energy sources. Obviously, I mean, internationally, it's a problem because we can't trust China and Russia to care as much as we do, but we don't want to worsen global climate change. I don't want to halt all progress in order to do that. So we just have to, and I saw that the projections for the worst case climate projections for where we're headed have been taken down a notch, and it's now that's not the most likely scenario. So what we're doing is working. We're curbing the most catastrophic, apocalyptic potential outcomes based on the energy use we're involved in, and we should just continue to work on it. I don't have any problem with that.
What do you make of the lithium discovery story?
I'm very little because I don't know very much about it. How are you even picturing this being done? Like going into the volcano and finding the lithium?
I just discovered that volcanologist was a word about 5 minutes
Oh,
ago.
you read it very well on the teleprompter. I saw you deciding how to pronounce that in real time.
Ew, yeah. So look, apparently this was discovered at the end of last year, last fall. You know, so much of what goes on in terms of foreign policy are really these resource wars. There's arguments to be made about that's even at the root of what's going on in Israel-Palestine, given that there have been these oil reserves that were found off the coast of Gaza. So certainly, I think there's probably some positive national security claims, and probably security interests for other countries that prefer not to have to become U.S. client states because they happen to possess reserves of some products that the rest of the world was eager to get its hands on. I don't really understand what environmental implications, if any, there would be to this. But it's an interesting development.
Yeah, this report says that the United States right now continues to rely on the rest of the world for its lithium. After extraction, most of the world's raw lithium is then transported to China, where they have more than half of the world's refining capacity. Again, this is all from the national interest.
Yeah, and the last story that we had covered in here was this question of whether or not protest groups that have nominal government funding should have, I guess, that funding, the funding should be stripped away because members of that group are engaged in protest.
Well, they should just not be funded, period, I guess. But
I mean, that's an argument for basically not government funding anything because people at various institutions are going to have belief. So are there free speech implications that folks should be worried about if we take a maximalist view of this and say, look at all the organizations, the private organizations that got PPP funding. Are we saying that you should not be able to get any government funding if some entity decides that they don't like the ideological perspective that you happen to espouse? If we find out that a media institution gets some nominal amount of media funding, should they be withdrawing that funding on the basis that the views that are expressed on a show like this one?
Well, they shouldn't withdraw it because of the views, but they should just not give it in the first place. Stripping away government funding is, in fact, my agenda, but we shall.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot that's going on. This reminds me of also the laws against BDS that someone like Abby Martin, a journalist, encountered, where she was supposed to give a speech, if I recall it correctly, and was not able to do so because it was at a state university, and they could not accept state money, government money, if they were seen as endorsing BDS.
Well, right.
She's an individual who happens to.
I don't think you should be prohibited. Obviously, that violates free speech, but we don't have to publicly fund your speech.
Well, that's a kind of coercion, and the Supreme Court has weighed in various ways that the federal government is or isn't allowed to use the withholding of federal money to coerce states to take certain behavior. And one can easily see how that coercive power is even that much greater on an individual level or an institutional level than it is on a whole kind of federal state level. So these are interesting things to keep following and keep track of.
That does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, we will have more of the show you love so dearly, we hope.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later.
Take care.